Hello, hockey fans, and welcome to the Draft Board Hockey Show. And this is a special episode. As you can see, we have some hockey content to talk to you about, specifically a mock draft for the first round. And I am going to introduce everyone that is on here. First and foremost, my boy Linc from New Wave Hockey, just getting back from Edinburgh, so he might be a little rough for this episode. Brock Otten, McKean's Hockey. That's who I write for. So Brock always, busting my chops about what I write, but that's okay. Rocco from the Puck Bunker Boys, him and Darren's to his far right, I guess. We got Anthony from Draft Prospects Hockey, Anthony, yeah. And then Sebastian High, and he is locked on NHL prospects and also from Elite Prospects. So welcome, everyone, and this is going to be fun.
Looking forward to it.
Let's go. Let's do it. Okay, so we have a randomized picking sequence, and here is based off of Tankathon. We got our selection pieces, and we're going to add all the names in as we move along. So I got the first pick, and so you know what? We got the San Jose Sharks, and this is a tough one because, like, if you look at their defensive core, they're all left shot, and do they go with my consensus number one, and that is Matthew Schaefer, or do they go with Michael Misa? I mean, you got Celebrini and Misa down the middle. That's a pretty nice duo, but I don't know if I can pass up Matthew Schaefer going first overall. So that's what I'm going to pick for San Jose. And you know what? This kid is just super dynamic. He is a stud. And you know what? He's one of the youngest draft eligible players in this draft, which is pretty impressive. Like, he's 10 days away from being selected in the 2026 draft. And the things that he's done at the World Juniors and Linc and all those things, I just think that, I don't know. I don't think they can pass up a player like this. He is going to be the number one D in San Jose. And you got some pretty nice depth there with Dickinson, Cagnoni, Thrun. So, you know what? I think I'm going to go with him as my number one pick. Misa could be talked about there, but I'm going to go with Matthew Schaefer. That's who I think is going to go number one there. Matthew Schaefer, number one to the San Jose Sharks. All right, number two. Who has the second pick?
I do.
Anthony, what do you think?
For a little bit, I was kind of scared that you're going to take Michael Misa, because I think at the number two pick, the Chicago Blackhawks would be running to the podium to take Michael Misa. That's who I'm going to take, but he is an incredible, he is having an incredible season. And I think that him pairing up with Connor Bedard would be absolutely unreal. He can play center or wing. And I think in the playoffs, if Connor Bedard's having a tough time, you can put him into the center dot, and he can take, those crucial faceoffs. He skates like the wind, which Kyle Davidson loves he loves drafting skaters. So I think that it's a perfect fit. I mean, at first I thought you were going to take Michael Misa and the Blackhawks would take Matthew Schaefer, which would be an incredible steal as well. Matthew Schaefer's incredible too. So I think Michael Misa is the pick here. I could have said Porter Martone to pair up with Connor Bedard as well. But Michael Misa is the guy that the Blackhawks would be running up to the podium. He has been incredible this year.
I think everyone's probably going to agree with that one too. So
yeah.
Michael Misa at number two.
Yeah, that was an easy one. I'm glad I got the second pick.
I think both those teams are pretty happy if they're selecting in those spots.
Yeah, for sure.
Completely agree.
It would be interesting who the Hawks take if they were first, though. I'd be actually quite interested in that decision for them.
I think Schaefer. With Levchinov, those two are...
Oh. Yeah. Then trade Korchinski, try to get a top 15 pick. Got Malcolm Spence. Dream scenario for the Erie Otter boys. But I actually think that the worst case scenario for the Hawks is if they were the second pick and then won the number one pick, because then they're out of the McKenna odds, just in case, we're bad or something happens next year, or they are bad and something happens next year. Then they wouldn't be able to pick number one, and it would be, we're going to take the same guy, or they're going to take the same guy anyway. I'm a we guy for the Blackhawks, so I think that's also something to think about.
Okay, so we got Michael Misa at number two to the Blackhawks. All right, number three.
That's me for Nashville.
Perfect.
So, yeah, my thinking with Nashville is their center depth is pretty good. Igor Surin, Svechkov, Edstrom. But I think that there's definitely a need for a high-end distributor there. And there's obviously a whole bunch available in this range for Nashville. They have definitely had a bias towards Sweden, WHL, US, obviously some outliers there, like some of the guys that I just named. But they also like their players to have a bit of bite to their game. So I'm kind of down to the obvious, which would be James Higgins, and the maybe not so obvious of Anton Frundell, just because of knowing the types of players that Nashville likes, the way that their system is currently designed, the players that they currently have in their system. I could see them definitely being interested in Frundell, especially if he continues to play well throughout the rest of the season into the U18s if he ends up playing there, obviously. But I'm going to stick with Higgins. I think that this is the kind of high-end playmaking center, pivot, whatever you want to call them, that Nashville needs in their system right now. They need somebody who has dynamic skill that can push pace, that can make plays with pace, that can make the players around them better. I think that's the one thing that they're kind of lacking in, let's say, maybe over evaluating or over what's the word I'm looking for here? Basically, they thought they were going to be better than they actually are this year, and that's why they're picking this high. So I think this kind of helps them, because I think Higgins is somebody that can slot in pretty quickly into that lineup too. Maybe not next year. I can see him returning for another year or needing a little bit of seasoning, if you will. But I think that the upside here is through the roof, and he's somebody that's going to be able to play in their top six for a decade and make the players around him better.
Yeah, I like that pick at 3 for sure, especially Nashville at that position. I mean, things could probably change in the next couple of weeks, but you can't go wrong with Higgins at 3 for sure.
You really can't. And on top of that, the Predators have so much depth in their prospect pool at every single position. There's like 5 guys that have a shot at making the NHL in some capacity. But as Brock was mentioning, what they lack is that dynamic skill element that can break open games. And Higgins is the guy to do that at the slot, I think, too.
Would anybody be shocked if Nashville took, say, Desnoyers or Frundell in that spot, though, just knowing the types of players they seem to like?
I think they should take those guys ahead of Higgins, personally. But I do think that Higgins has maybe a superstar element that those guys may not. That said, give me either of those 2 guys you just mentioned when the game's on the line over Higgins. Personally, my humble opinion. But I do think that if Nashville winds up at 3, that's probably who they're targeting. Nashville loves a star, and he could be a star.
And we don't know what's going to happen because they haven't picked this high ever, or like it's been a long time since they picked this high. I think they picked a defenseman the last time they picked this high, so they're definitely going to break from that tradition this year because they're probably not going to get Schaefer. But in terms of big games, I mean, we just saw big game James in his last pick. Also, Brock, I guess I'm picking next because I got Philadelphia. I was excited because I thought you were about to take Frundell and make my job really easy as the Flyers general manager. But right now at 4, Philadelphia, they have 4 reasonable options here to pick, and they're all forwards. But I'm ruling out Victor Eklund and Porter Martone right away because I picked Eklund last time. I got a lot of flack for it, but also the Flyers need centers really bad. Their second line center right now is Noah Cates, who is notably not a center. So I'm between Anton Frundell and Caleb Desnoyers here. And I'm not going to lie to you. In the recent weeks, it's been tougher and tougher to kind of pick these 2 apart. I really do like both their games. I really do like just the dynamism that each brings in their individual games. However, I am going to be leaning with the player that I think has more seaworthiness as a center, and I'm going to be going at number 4 with Caleb Desnoyers.
Yeah,
the Flyers. So basically, I'm not picking Frundell again, so kind of tragic. But what Caleb Desnoyers brings, I think, is really, really just unique as a prospect. I mean, he's not the best skater, but his transition game is really solid. His just power play, I wouldn't even call it power play, but his distributing also can get better, but he's showing a really awesome vision. Plus, he's got a great shot. I really like all the things that Caleb Desnoyers brings. Plus, he is Philly. Watch this kid finish a check. Oh my gosh, he screams Philly to me. He just seems like a very passionate player, and I really would love to walk away with Caleb Denoyer. Anton Frondell is an option here too. I can't act like it's not. But in terms of just what the Flyers need, they need centers. And at this place, I really think that Denoyer projects more as a center than Frondell does. And I also think that he would be a excellent pairing with Matvei Michkov, which I think is what you're going to have to take into effect here.
It's my favorite player in the draft right there. I love him.
You've been talking about Caleb for a long time, eh?
Well, he does everything really well. And it's not many guys you watch and you just continuously watch them multiple times and they keep doing the right thing constantly. And he's a big body and he has lots of room to grow. And he's physical.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you compare him to some other guys, he could be a powerful centerman. It's there because he's a 6'2", it's a 6'2" body, about $180 right now. So wait till he's like 210. Like this is going to be a very hard player to play against in all situations and probably lead to winning, which is the whole point here. So I love that pick for them. And I would be a Flyers fan after that. So good job.
Join the club.
All right, so we got Caleb Denoyer at number 4 to the Philadelphia Flyers. And I think, Rocco, you're the next pick, right?
Yeah, and this is kind of tough for Buffalo because, I think, Frondell is the obvious guy here. He's my current highest rated guy available. I think he's a future 30-goal guy. He's incredibly smart, versatile, but he's not super big. He's already fairly developed. In the last few years, Buffalo has gotten away. They drafted size for a long time, and the last couple of years is Hellenius, Benson, Ostlund, Savoie, which they turned into McLeod. And where they actually have a need is on the right side of their defense core. And I think there's a couple guys that would be better fits for Buffalo. So I would entertain, if Buffalo ends up picking 5th, I could see a very realistic scenario where they're trading down maybe to try and target Radim Murtkat, which is who I would love to actually take for Buffalo in terms of fit for the organization. But, top 5 of the draft, I think you're taking the best guy available. To me, that is Anton Frondell, and that's who I'm going to pick for the Buffalo Sabres, despite them maybe already having some pretty solid center depth, both currently and organizationally. Frondell's too good of a two-way player to pass up here. He has one of the best, if not the best shot in the draft. He's incredibly smart. He knows how to get open. He knows how to create lanes for himself to shoot the puck. He knows how to manipulate passing lanes. Me and Darren have argued about him quite a bit throughout the season, but I'm pretty set in my ways on this guy. I just don't see anything about his game that's a red flag whatsoever. Much like Denoyer, he does a lot of the right things most of the time, and he's a winning type of player. Statistically, I think he's a little better offensively than some people are going to give him credit for. In terms of the Allsvenskan League, which is where he played this year in a 17-year-old season, he just recorded the highest points per game of all time. And number 2 and 3 on those lists are William Nylander and David Pastrnak. So, yeah, okay, it's a second division, but he's still putting up near a point a game against men. He had an unbelievable second half. And, he had a very high draft stock coming into the year. It dipped a little bit, and I think he's right back to where we started at the beginning of the year with this guy being a slam dunk top 5 pick.
Boom. There you go. I think we're good on that one then. We're not going to debate that. Anton Frondell at number 5 to the Buffalo Sabres. We got Seattle picking next, and that goes to Sebastian, right?
Indeed it does. And the Seattle Kraken here, I think, are going to be a pretty happy organization with how the draft fell for this team. This is not an organization that has ever spent a first-round draft selection on a blue liner, and I don't think that's going to change here. Maybe they entertain Radim Murtka, but with big contracts having been handed out to guys like Brandon Montour very recently, I think they're going to stick at forward. And they already have some very stable centermen in their organization like Matty Beniers and Shane Wright, and have a lot of depth scoring from the wing. But what I think they lack the very most is speed, power, and dynamism on the right-hand side. And there were two very good options for that in this draft class, one of whom I completely wrote off to even being available here at 6th overall. There were 4 players I did not think would make it this far, and he was one of them. So I think the Seattle Kraken are going to be selecting Porter Martone of the Brampton Steelheads, who has been so dynamic this season. 98 points in 57 games. 37 of those have been goals, and he has a big physical frame. He likes to use that. We've seen big bursts of violence from this player this season, but still a lot of growing room, I think, in terms of the smaller physical details and the habits. So a player who I think can still evolve his game quite a bit in the coming seasons, and to pair him with guys like Shane Wright and Berkeley Catton, I think would be fantastic down the road, and would also allow Martone to perhaps develop his goal scoring side a little bit. I think if he lands in Seattle, perhaps you see their development focusing a bit more on putting the puck in the net than setting up those chances. But I think that the Kraken would be sprinting up to the podium at 6th overall to select this player.
Nice.
Steal the draft right there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good fit, Sebastian. I think
Absolutely.
that Seattle would be very happy if Martone is still left at 6. If it wasn't, I think they'd probably be looking at somebody like McQueen, right? I think
McQueen
that type of player is something they need in their system, whether it's a center, whether it's a wing, somebody who can play that power game, play with pace, like you said.
My only thing with Martone is that I don't know if dynamic is how I would necessarily describe him. I think of all the guys,
creative,
and for sure he's incredibly creative. But of all the guys that were picked in the top 6, him included, he has the biggest flaw of any of these guys, which is his pace of play. And in my opinion, that's why you see him fall to 6. And maybe like the people that love Martone are absolutely convinced. And I have all the time in the world to hear the argument that in 5 years' time, this guy's going to be top 3 in scoring from this draft class. That would not surprise me one little bit. But equally, don't be surprised if he does slip to 6 or 7, because teams don't want to miss on a top 5 pick. And pace of play, it is a real concern for him. And while he may have more upside than some of the guys that have already been chosen, he also has more downside. And I think that's why you got lucky and got him at 6.
I think the big thing for Martone is consistency. I think that the player that we see is almost different from shift to shift, game to game. And that's not necessarily talking about an intensity level. I think he sometimes gets miscast as like this big, burly power forward, when that is definitely an aspect of his game that you see, but it's not shift to shift. It's not game to game. I think that he's somebody that is probably going to have to settle into more of like a support role at the NHL level. I think that he's going to have to become a little bit more versatile, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can make that adjustment. I think he has all the attributes to be a really good support player. But can he? And I think that's maybe where teams are going to have to make that judgment call on him. But when you get to 6th or 7th or 8th in this draft, if he's still there, I think that's a no-brainer just based on the upside that he possesses, and a bit of mystique, intrigue there, because you don't really know. Even though he is a late birthday, I think just with the role that he has in Brampton in the OHL, I think it kind of maybe masks some of the things that he can do at times if he were to be playing with different players and put in a bit of a different situation. So I think his development path is not really set in stone. I think there's a lot of different ways that it could go.
Also, one more thing about Martone. Again, Sebastian, you make a great point that they're pairing him from day one with Berkeley Catton, again, who is solid skater, high pace of play with Martone's low pace of play. At worst case scenario, with that little pairing right there, Martone's just going to sit in front of the net for a lot of these Berkeley Catton drives and just clean up whatever's in the trash. And honestly, that's for this draft. Let's just kind of like that's perfectly fine by me. I think Porter Martone needs a lot to do in terms of just like developing and becoming more dynamic as a prospect. Again, like Brock says, he's miscast as this really dynamic scorer. But again, going to Seattle, you can kind of be sure that there's kind of the foundation in place just in case he doesn't become that. He can still help carve out a role for himself.
Okay, so we got Porter Martone at 6 to Seattle. And then finishing off our first part of this, Darren, you got cleanup?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to what Brock said there.
Okay.
There is a lack of engagement with Martone sometimes, which honestly for me, that bothers me a lot, especially with bigger guys. I don't like seeing that out of them. Like, it's just, maybe it's a personal bias, but that is something that does concern me. And I would like to see him be more physical at times. So comparing him to, say, Desnoyers, who I was talking about being quite physical the majority of the time, I honestly think there's more potential of Desnoyers being more of a power forward type than Martone is. And that might just be me, but I at least see that engagement a lot of the time. So anyway, I'll go on to my pick here. I'm going to be looking at the so Pittsburgh Penguins. They kind of need a bit of everything, I would say. So my pick here, someone who's down the road from me, centerman Jake O'Brien. I really like this player. He has improved as the year has gone on. I think his playmaking is probably top of class, very close to it. His ability just in general on the power play is definitely elite. His passing ability, I think Rocco said this on a previous podcast. He surprises teammates with passes. Like they do not expect the puck to be coming to him. I mean, he's a 6'2" body again, like Desnoyers. That's something again that I really like. He's still pretty thin. So this is another guy. I think there's a lot of development room here with this player. He had almost 100 points this year. Brantford kind of traps a lot of the time, especially when they get leads. That's actually quite impressive to me that they ended up getting that many points. And again, a lot of it was on the power play, but still. Now, is there some skating ability here? I don't know how high of speed that he ends up having, but you do see a player here that I think at worst is a second line center here with first line center upside. So I really like him. My issue with taking McQueen here is I'm just worried about the injury stuff. And I also don't think he sees the ice as well as O'Brien does. Counter is McQueen is a lot bigger than him and has great hands and can shoot the puck. And those are the two guys to be looking at here. I'm going to take Jake O'Brien. I think that's, maybe a bit of a safer pick, but again, I'm going to go for my preference of what I've seen. I really like this guy.
The thing I'll add to O'Brien is that early in the year, the questions about him were his offensive upside, which is hilarious to me because I think he has piles of it. And he was sneak bit early. His first 15 games, he only had 12 points. He finished with 98 points, but only 12 points on those first 15 games. Since then, he's 114-point pace, which puts him in the realm up there in terms of
Wonder Conference. So.
In the last 10 years. That would put him really high on that list, just below guys like Stroman, Marner, and Spezza. But he really picked that up. And like Darren said, he got better and better and better as the year went on. And I think he is just scratching the surface. He's pretty thin. You can see the improvements in his game. He's taken leaps and bounds from the start of the year till now, which is something that you look for. And I think at worst, you're looking at a number 2 center. Tough to pass on that at 7th overall.
And Pittsburgh needs they do need a centerman here.
All right. Jake O'Brien to the Pens. That's a good pick. Now you left me with a tough one here because Boston picks next. And I don't know. So, there's a couple of options here. One of my favorite players in this draft is Victor Eklund. Like the kid is just, you want to talk about someone that doesn't stop. His pace and his compete and everything about him is awesome. But Boston needs a nice big centerman. So I'm gonna have to go with Roger McQueen. I think that even though he has that injury, I think that there's still he still has some good upside. And I think that, like you said, he doesn't see the ice as well as maybe some of the other centers in this draft, but he's so big and he's got the talent for sure. And for him coming back, it's not like Caden Lidstrom, who's still, he took a full year and a half off. McQueen came back and, from the first few viewings that I've seen him back, he's looking pretty good. And I think that, Boston can't pass up a big forward like that, big centerman like that. So I'm going to go with Roger McQueen at number 8 to the Bruins.
I was
Tough
scared
luck
you were going
like
to
that.
pass up on him.
What's that?
I was scared you were going to pass up on him. My bad for overlapping you, Rocco. But considering who they picked last year, Dean Latorno, the Dean Pot, as he is referring to, I would be shocked if McQueen is both available to be picked at Boston's pick and they don't take him. He screams Boston to me. But also, ironically, one of the things that I kind of critique McQueen for is his off-puck game and his and some of his defensive game. I think he would be really well-rounded if he went to Boston. They've been able to they've proven that they can round out centers. They can round out some really raw prospects, and I really trust them as a development place for McQueen. Probably one of the better places that he could end up. So I do like that pick.
And he's already used to wearing some black and yellow on his jerseys, so I think it's a good fit in that sense.
All right, so Roger McQueen to Boston at number 8. Next, we have the Anaheim Ducks. And
I'm the Anaheim Ducks, but I did want to say a little tidbit about Roger McQueen. I actually posted my interview on him yesterday, and one of the comments was Mark Allred, and he said that Don Sweeney was actually at a Wheat Kings game recently to check out, Roger McQueen and some of those other players that are on the Wheat Kings. So I actually think that is an incredible move, and the Bruins I think, actually would be interested in him at that point. So that was a good pick. And I think Pat Verbeek for the Anaheim Ducks would run to the podium to get Victor Eklund. I was going to say Lyndon Lakovic to when I saw my placement here, or Jake O'Brien. I liked both of those fits, but I think Victor Eklund is incredible. I think he's somebody that can pair perfectly with, someone like Leo Carlson, there's just so much talent with Victor Eklund. What he's doing, I think that would be the perfect fit. I actually don't think that he would be there for their pick. He's just so talented. And what he does, I actually think that he is more upside than someone like Anton Frondel. But I think Victor Eklund would be the pick here for sure.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that.
I love that since pick 2, every single one of us can't believe our guy's there.
Yeah. It's like 2023 draft when nobody traded down. Everybody just got who they wanted. I think 2025 might be similar. It's going to be pick your poison or who you want kind of draft. And I think that this draft has kind of become a little underrated, if we're being honest, where 2026 with Gavin McKenna is overshadowing this draft. I think that 2025 is actually a pretty good draft. Top 16, but there's a lot of good talent.
The high-end talents here, the depth is a bit lacking compared to at least the last couple seasons, in my opinion.
Where do you think the drop-off is, though, in my opinion? I know I don't want to veer off, but
24. I think it's like back half of the first round. Like if I'm picking like 27th overall, I'm thinking of trading back and getting a pair of seconds or something, because like the tier kind of just ranges from, like, at least for me, it goes from 25 to like 50 or something. I've seen like there's a bunch of guys that are very much in the same mix, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sebastian. I think that's kind of where the drop off is, like kind of after 20. Like when we were putting together, I don't know about you guys at EP, but when we were trying to put together our recent list of McKeans, we kind of hit that like 2022 spot. And then it was like, okay, like who wants to advocate for somebody for the back half of this first round? And it was almost silence, like crickets, right? Where there are definitely a lot of interesting players available, as there are in any draft. But I do feel like normally we've had quite a few players sort of step up later in the year where you're like, okay, like this person is making a push into that range. Like this guy is a clear first round pick now. For me, maybe the only one that's doing that, not to sidetrack things, but like Cole McKinney, maybe out of the NDDP is one guy that I've seen have a really strong finish to the year. And I think is pushing himself firmly into that range. But there haven't been a ton of guys that are doing that. We've had injuries. We've had inconsistent play. I mean, the U18s could really do a lot. And I know it's only one tournament, but in a year where there isn't, those clear groupings, that one tournament can make a huge difference for certain guys. And I think that we're going to see a few guys really rise from that tournament this year, maybe more so than we normally do.
And we can expect some really wacky late first round picks this season of players that are like publicly third round or fourth round draft picks and just end up going there because for an NHL team, they'll be right in that mix with all the other guys that we see there too.
I've had my money on a Harry Nancy surprise like first round pick. I think that will be that'll be something. So I bet my friend like it's gonna be Nancy who's gonna be the one who is gonna shock everyone. We'll see though.
We just did our last episode on Russian players. That's one where, I think that kind of influences the draft order a little bit. We don't see these guys, especially in those under 18 tournaments or, World Juniors and that. I think that kind of makes it a little bit harder, to make those picks late in the first round, because I do think there's some talent over there that, a lot of scouts probably haven't been able to see it in person. So,
all right, we got Brock next, right?
I'm Detroit at 10. Yeah. So this is a tough one because I feel like Detroit has kind of been middling for the last few years, and every year at the draft, we're kind of hoping that the Red Wings bank on upside and they take a guy that can really sort of push them over the edge. And then every year we're not shocked when the Wings sort of settle for somebody who plays more of a mature, steady, pro-ready game that maybe lacks a little bit more upside compared to some other players that are available. And it's kind of like rinse, repeat, Groundhog Day every single year with the Wings. So, we're looking at number 10 here with the Red Wings, and there are obviously some players available that could fit that mold. But I'm going to finally bank on them going for some upside in Lyndon Lakovich. I think that this is a big guy. Yes, he's a later birthday, but the speed, the skill that he has with his frame is going to be enticing. Yes, there's some consistency issues, the consistency off puck. What kind of player is he? Is he a power forward? Is he more of a just a skill guy that happens to be big? I think there are some question marks. Obviously the team that he plays for is, we'll call them rebuilding. So he's had to shoulder a lot of the weight there in Moose Jaw. But I think that there is a ton of upside for him to develop into somebody who can be a high-end impact player for the Wings. And I think that he makes a lot of sense in this spot based on, their bias towards the West in recent drafts, we'll say the last half decade. And I think that they also have had a tendency to look at players like him, maybe not in the first, but, in the mid rounds who have those physical tools, we'll call them. And I think that he's somebody that could fit in really well with this pick for Detroit.
I'm a little surprised. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't have Lakovic that high, but with everything you're saying, completely 6'4". He's been playing some really good hockey. He's been scoring a lot for Moose Jaw there, and they've been a kind of, I wouldn't say pathetic, but it's been a brutal year there in Moose Jaw. I totally thought you were teeing up Justin Carbonneau, and he's actually fallen right into my lap there. So I'm happy, but yeah, I would say I'm a little surprised with that though.
Boys,
I've struggled with him all year because, again, it goes to that bias thing I have. The big guys that don't hit just annoy the hell out of me. And my problem with him is when he does get hit, it still doesn't really change anything. Like, he doesn't get angry. Like, he's not – that worries me. Like, I need to – it does worry me. Like, I need to see more there. However – what he's saying with the pick, I do agree Detroit probably does need to take a shot on a guy here. Like, I completely agree with that. They can't really be taking a ho-hum guy here. They need to kind of hit a home run here, especially with where their team's at. Like, they need to find some elite skill. So Lakovic does have elite tools. Like, it is definitely there. But yeah, there's some things there that are just red flags to me that I haven't been that happy to see. But I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I mean, when outside of this range here, right,
yeah,
with some of the players on the board, when I highlighted 5 guys who I thought could really fit in at number 10 for Detroit, you guys drafted 4 of the other ones. And I just don't know where else Detroit goes. They obviously could go Carbonneau, but I also think maybe they see a little bit of Philip Zadina in him, right? And there might be a little bit of concern that is the type of player that he ends up becoming. So just based on if Detroit is going to take a swing on a guy who's got a ton of skill and does have a ton of upside, I think they're going to lean towards a player with some size. And that's not to say that Carbonneau is small, but I do think that just based on maybe some biases in their scouting department, that's the type of player that they'd lean towards. Otherwise, you're looking at a more safer player. Detroit could easily jump off the page here and take Deshaun Aitchison, right? Like that's a player that's right up their alley that they absolutely love, that kind of player. I don't think it's a huge reach. I think that he's kind of in that like 13 to 17 range at this point. So it's not a massive reach. He is somebody that they could entertain. This is a team that took Brady Cleveland at the beginning of the second round, right? They like this type of player. So just knowing what Detroit likes, I agree with you, Darren. There are concerns there. But with a lot of the guys in this range, it's either a concern about upside, it's a concern about off puck play, it's a concern about skating, it's a concern about size. Colin Potter obviously is a dynamic player, but I can't see the Wings entertaining him this high. I can't see really any team entertaining him this high. As much as we love him at McKean's, I don't think he's going to be drafted as high as amateur scouts, as the public scouts have him. So then who do you end up with, right? And that's kind of how I ended on Lakovic.
And going back to what you mentioned about Martone earlier today, Brock, because he is a big body, there is this expectation that he brings all this physicality. When I watch Lakovic play, I see a soft skill player. I don't see a player that's going to become a power forward. That's not his game. He is I think the puck protection mechanics have improved quite a bit this season. So you're seeing some of the smaller details take those steps. But he, at his core, is a dynamic, creative threat. And I think that just because he's big shouldn't mean that there are those same expectations. Like, by contrast, a guy like Jake O'Brien, he's never going to be physical. He's never going to be like resisting bunch of physical contact at the NHL level, even if he does gain 30 pounds or something by the time he plays. Just because he's 2 inches shorter, there isn't that same expectation. And I think that with Lakovic, he makes more than sense in this range. And like Brock, you said, the Red Wings need this kind of dynamism.
If he's put into a situation where he's not expected to be the primary play driver on the line, he can find, I believe, a lot of success in terms of the offensive counting total stats at the end of the year. A guy like Dylan Larkin, for example, might be a great type of centerman to play with a guy like this. I think it would be unfair of him, for people to expect him to develop into a bruising power forward. Like Sebastian said, that's just not his game. He is a skilled player at the heart of his game. The alternative to that is why. When you're 6'4", just choose to be harder. You're big. Just choose. Add that element to your game. It's a choice. And if he makes that choice, we could be looking at a hell of a player. If he doesn't, I'm not sure that in a few years that they're going to be happy with the pick. But he has all the tools and all the ability. I'll say that about him. But he needs to choose. He's 6'4". There's no excuse not to be a little tougher than you are.
And one of those things was he was a late grower, so he's just trying to figure out his body. I actually asked him this when I was interviewing him. He said he didn't really know how to play with his body, and he's trying to figure that out. So once he figures that out and builds some more muscle, he's going to be incredible. Like Sebastian said, he has that skill, and he plays like he's 6 foot or under 6 feet with just at 6'4". So he's someone in my top 10. So I really like that pick. But yeah, I think if he grows into his body and figures out how to play with that more physical play, he's going to be somebody that could make a couple all-star appearances.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, he's essentially this year's Beckett Seneca, right?
Yep, I was just going to say that.
And that's a player who's still trying to figure out everything too. And the other thing to mention too with Lakovic is he is a late birthday, and there is an opportunity for him to maybe move a little bit more quickly through the system. A little bit more. Obviously, he's got to add bulk to his frame because he did grow recently. But with the Wings wanting to take that next step, he is somebody that maybe only needs another year, and then could play in their middle six. And that's. I think that's going to be appealing to a team like Detroit. I think it's appealing to a bunch of teams that are going to be picking in this range that we're going to talk about.
Also be very fun in the middle six rookie season to have Brandsley Newgart on the other wing. I think that would be a really good complementary balance on the two sides.
That's a really good fit.
All right. So I think I'm next. Rangers at number 11. And I've talked about it. I've made myself very clear. I'm taking Justin Carbonneau here. I think that there's a lot of things that you can love with his game. He first and foremost, look at the shot. You'll love to see it. He is just a big game player, a big game scorer, and he has turned it up at the end of the year. I really have a profound respect for players who start scoring and score better at a higher clip when it really matters down the playoff stretch. And that was something he was absolutely doing this year. He has become a big leader on that Blandville team. And I will say he's not just a big scorer. His passing vision has improved tremendously this year from something that wasn't really worth writing home about to something that I can see a future with it. I can really see a future with him like being a well-rounded offensive player. Look at guys like Matteo Nobel this year, Lars Steiner. They've benefited from how much better of a distributor he's become. Again, he's still a little bit raw. He's got to work out some kinks in his game, namely the stick handling and some of his IQ and decision-making. But Justin Carbonneau, when we're talking about the New York Rangers, they need offense bad. I think this year is a very big kind of just emphasis. They need to find some offensive drivers in that lineup. And Gabe Perreault's coming up. All right. He might sign the second the BC season is over. He probably will sign the second this BC season is over. And that's one big piece of help. But you need someone who can drive a line. I think Justin Carbonneau is one of those line drivers that the Rangers can add to themselves. Surprisingly, here at 11, I actually thought someone might take him in the first 10 picks, but we'll see. I mean, you guys waited to pick Vic Eklund at 9. So look, we'll see. I'm happy that Carbonneau dropped here for the Rangers. I hope they don't take him in real life because I'm a Flyers fan, but it's a great pick nonetheless, I think, for them. Great fit.
He's a fascinating player. I watched him live like 2 weeks ago when Moncton was in town in Blainville. Like I'm based in Montreal, so just went up with my colleague and friend Hattie Kalakash to watch him play. And the juxtaposition between those two players is hilarious. Where Desnoyers makes excellent decisions 18 times a shift. He's always in position. He's always keeping really controlled gaps with all of his opponents. Carbonneau was like very on and off in terms of shift to shift. It wasn't his best game. He was really inconsistent defensively. The effort came and went. But as soon as he got the puck on his stick in a dangerous area offensively, even after like the weirdest zone entry I've seen this season in the queue that he kind of led, it was not NHL decisions by any stretch of the imagination on any of those plays, but the puck bounced to him and he fired off of a wicked shot. He has like those elite level tools to make those big differences. And especially when you have a playmaker like Gabe Perreault coming in, I think those two could pair really nicely together. And I haven't quite seen the same flash of playmaking in Carbonneau's game this season as Linc has. But I think in terms of just goal scoring and handling and the skating can also really be a high end tool, I think, in the NHL someday once he gets that explosiveness under him, because the top speed's really good, the agility is really good, and everything links so nicely together when he's on his game.
I mean, you're absolutely right about.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about. The compete is something I did forgot. I didn't mention that much. Again, I think he's been getting better. I mean, I from what I've seen, because I've seen a lot of his February stuff, because he has turned it on like for Blandville on the run up to the playoffs. I feel like he's really been more consistent in terms of just effort, in terms of giving his team more night in, night out than he was in the fall and in the middle of winter. But that is a concern. Like, again, it's something like him and Malcolm Spence. They are ludicrously talented, ludicrous, like can take over games whenever they want to, but whenever they want to. So that's like a big thing there. I think in that sense, he's similar to Gabe Perreault, but I'm a noted Justin Carbonneau tire pumper, as the Puckmunker boys and Mark know very well. So, yeah.
It's a New York style player too.
I'll just say I was pretty hard on him earlier in the year. I've seen the improvement with him too. I think there is, I do, as you said, I do really kind of take that into consideration when guys are improving. His D zone, yes, like that does need work. His effort with the puck, though, like can't really be denied. When he gets the puck, he's going 150 miles an hour. He's almost going a little too fast for what he can do. That's what I said to Rocco one time. It looks like he chugged 3 Red Bulls before the game sometimes. Like that's kind of where I'm at times. But I mean, the physical tools are there. You're seeing improvement. I can understand taking a guy like him. I just think it is a development process. But I could also see him again there. Maybe the floor here, I was worried that maybe the floor was, maybe he only has to play in a top 6. Maybe he can play in a lower part in the lineup. Like maybe that is possible if he's coached up to do that, because it looks like he's been told by his coach to float for offense a lot of the games. So I do wonder that a little bit with the way they play.
All right, so we got Justin Carbonneau to the Rangers at 11. Utah's next, and that is Rocco. What you got for us, Rocco?
Well, I didn't think I would have a pick this easy, but Rada Murka. And what's the hardest position to fill? Right-handed defenseman. It's one thing you can't teach. Big. He's an excellent skater. I think his puck moving game is, I would call it developing. It's certainly a lot better than it was earlier in the year, and it's improved since he got to the WHL. Partway through the beginning of the season there. He's close to a point a game in the dub, and don't draft him with the expectation that he's going to continue to put up numbers at the NHL level. That said, I do think he's demonstrated enough playmaking ability, enough creativity with the puck on his stick in the offensive zone that there is some secondary offensive game. But you're drafting this guy to be a 24-minute a night shutdown defenseman that's going to play on your first pair for the next 15 years. And it is the hardest position to fill. It's what teams pay through the nose for when they have a chance to get a guy like this. I don't see any way he falls out of the top 10. He's an extremely high floor. There's very little risk here that this is not going to be a very long time NHL player. Right-handed defenseman come at a premium. We saw last year the 3 righties went first, despite almost nobody having the 3 righties ranked as the first 3 off the board. I think we need to keep in mind teams really do put a premium on the fact that he is a righty, and the size and skating combination along with the shot. I think Utah, they've got a little bit of everything. They're in a position where they can go best player available. They've got Iginla coming up. They've got Daniel Butt. They've got Lamoureux. They've got Simashev. They've got Baudouin. It's pretty much a guy at every position and different types of players too. So they have a little bit of luxury here to just kind of sit and wait and see who falls. And Rada Murka is the guy that fell here to them. If he's available at 12, I don't see any scenario where they pass on this guy. For me, he's an easy top 10 pick, and I'd be shocked if he falls this far.
I think he's going top 10 too. I mean, the just raw defensive ability has impressed me all year long as well when he was playing in Czechia before he transferred over to North America against pro competition. The defensive intelligence, the overall composure against the rush, I think is really, really great. He's very mobile at 6'6", and I think that one of the better rush defenders in this year's draft. So I think that the Utah Hockey Club, to pair a defenseman with like perhaps Dmitry Simashev longer term, if you just want a complete like shut down, you are not getting a single shot on goal against us kind of pairing, I think those two could work very nicely together, especially late in games protecting the lead.
Rada Murka to Utah 12. Montreal goes to Sebastian in your backyard. So Sebastian, who the Habs taking?
Lots of options here. I mean, the Montreal Canadiens have one of the best prospect pools in the league. They have players in pretty much every position, whether you're thinking about Demidov at forward, Fowler and net, Reinbacher coming in on defense as well. But overall, the weaknesses in this pool would likely be at right shot defense in terms of depth. You don't think, I personally wouldn't want my team to have Logan Mailloux as the second best prospect down the right side longer term. So right shot defense make a lot of sense. I think Murtka would have been very appealing for the Habs here as well. Just like Logan Hensler and Blake Fiddler might be quite appealing for the Habs. But honestly, the Habs have proven themselves to be very adaptable drafters and going for upside and going for value as well on draft day rather than just taking swings on positions. So I think they're actually going to be doubling down on a position they have quite in abundance, but who can play on his offside. And that is the last top 9 player on my personal draft board. And that's Jackson Smith of the Tri-City Americans in the WHL, a tremendously mobile, physical left shot defenseman. In my opinion, the best rush defender in the class, just edging out Matthew Schaefer in that regard. Murka's right in there in that conversation too. He had 9 goals at the end of the season in a 10 or 11 game span after scoring 1 all year long before that. The activations in the offensive zone have become increasingly more common as the year's gone on. And that combination of flashes of offensive dynamism while playing on a weaker team. Like Tri-City isn't the team with the most abundant skill in the league. So I think the offense has more room to, I guess, shine in coming seasons. And in terms of being able to pair with a guy like Lane Hudson, I don't think it matters if there are two left shot defensemen. Smith has that elite mobility, the physicality, the rush defending to also help insulate Hudson a little bit on his own activations, while also being able to learn a little bit from Hudson in terms of growing his own offensive game. I think the Habs would be pouncing at this player on draft day, even though it is a position that the Habs have quite a few players in. Think of Caden Gooley as well, but multiple guys can play on both sides, and that would certainly solidify the defensive core quite a bit moving forward, while bring a bunch of elements the Habs have proven themselves to value time and time again in recent years.
Tough to disagree with that one. That was a great pick at that spot for Montreal.
No, I like him. It's just I struggle with the decision making at times, but everything else, I mean, the rush defending is really good. He can move. If you can just get those, some of the kind of has like a brain cramp every game you see there at times. So if you can kind of get that out of his game, this is going to be a high end NHL defenseman. You see, you kind of see the canvas there. It's a good pick there.
And he's a May birthday, has some more growing room too. Like I like him a lot as a player.
Yeah.
They have like 2 picks near that range. So I think best player available, then high upside would probably what they would do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jackson Smith, 13 to the Habs. Number 14, the Isles, and Darren, that is you.
So we did this exercise before, and I ended up with the same 2 first picks here. So I'm taking the Islanders, who, again, I said last time are in the murky middle, which is still the case. And they're going to take a right shot defenseman because, again, I'm still hearing that they might want to trade Noah Dobson. And I'm going to take Logan Hensler. And, again, they tend to like the draft. Last year they drafted out of the U.S. program. This seems to be kind of a pattern they have. Really good skater, right shot defenseman. I mean, I think this is a guy that can play in a lineup, pretty easily. You can see it. I don't know about the offensive upside per se. I'm not sure that's in his game or not. Wouldn't be totally drafting him for that anyway. But again, there's a guy here. He skates like the wind. Good defensive player. He can make a first pass. He'll contribute. And then maybe you get a little bit of offensive upside. So it's not an exciting pick for the Islanders, but I think it's a solid pick for them, getting a solid player, maybe a need, kind of fits the pattern that they've been employing at least last year anyway.
Yeah, everyone's good with Logan Hensler then, I guess. Not too much.
No controversy.
No controversy at all at that pick. So
such an Islanders pick.
It's literally he's going to the Islanders. I don't think there's any argument.
Yeah. There you go. Logan Hensler, 14 to the Isles. Pretty safe pick right there. All right, so I am next, and I got the Vancouver Canucks. They're kind of weak up in the middle there. So I'm going to go, and I just actually went to see him play last night in Windsor, and that is forward and center Brady Martin. And this kid has some compete. Let me tell you something. This shift right here, look at this. Takes a run at this guy. He chases the puck down, takes a run at this guy, and then he ends up scoring the goal in front here. So, that's the kind of stuff that you get from Brady Martin. He's got great pace. Like I said, is the offensive upside there? Probably not high end. However, just the overall toolkit that he has, I think that Vancouver couldn't pass up a player of this caliber, especially at the 15th overall pick. That's my pick right there.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick, man. I'm a big Brady Martin fan. Yeah, there are some concerns there, but I think some of it is just in deployment. I think when you look at what role the Sioux coaching staff has given him this year and how he needs to be sort of everything for that team, I think that profile plays better at the NHL level. I think that he's going to learn to refine his game. If you look on Instat, like he leads the OHL in successful dekes, and he leads the OHL in unsuccessful dekes. So turnovers have been a big issue, but he's kind of had the green light all year to just try to make things happen for that team. And if that means turning the puck over, they're pretty confident in his ability to work to get it back, right? And yeah, he's going to have to refine his game. Yeah, he's going to have to improve his skating even more than he already has. But there's a lot to like there. I think he's got more offensive upside maybe than people give him credit for. I really do believe so. I think that not every player needs to be Connor Bedard to have offensive upside. And I think Vancouver could be looking at somebody like Ryan O'Reilly or a Mike Richards type with Brady. And that player is going to be somebody that plays on your second line for a decade and plays in all sort of situations for you. He's very versatile. And I think that's what Brady's going to bring to the table. And I think that he's somebody that's going to really solidify his place in the top like 12 or 13 at the U18s. I think he's going to be one of Canada's play drivers at that tournament. I think he's going to really impress people there.
Talk about a player that Vancouver needs. At that pick. That guy, he's got some bite. They need some bite in that lineup. I'll also, to your point, Brock, about his successful dekes and unsuccessful dekes, I really enjoy when a player is given the confidence and given the runway to just try new things, to try dekes, to try to gain that confidence, to get that because again, they're actively developing in front of us. We're watching these players develop in front of our eyes, and when they have more chances, they have more opportunities to practice. I look at that as a plus. That's why I like a guy like Radim Murtka and his offensive upside compared to some other players. That's a really good point there with just they're giving him some runway. They're giving him time to just develop as a offensive talent. So I rock with it. I do.
All right. Brady Martin, 15, Vancouver. Montreal's next pick, and that goes to Anthony.
I was going to pick Carter Bear here because I liked the upside play where he's injured, lacerated Achilles, and they have 2 first-round picks in this area. But actually, I'm going to go with Malcolm Spence here. I think that Malcolm Spence would fit really well in that lineup. He has been killing it in the Otters playoffs. Everybody is right now for Saginaw against Saginaw, which I was kind of surprised about without Matthew Schaefer. But Malcolm Spence just brings a confidence that you can't really teach. I really like his aura when he's playing. I know that's really not scouting or scouting insight, but I actually like what Malcolm Spence brings. He plays a big 6'2" role. I think that he would fit really well on a line with. If Kirby Doc is still there, when he can even play, when Malcolm Spence is in the league, I think that would be kind of a cool fit. Nick Suzuki, something like that. I think that Malcolm Spence would fit really well in the lineup. I'm a really big fan of him.
I completely agree with you in terms of just saying aura or anything. It's something that I've absolutely taken notice. I wouldn't say aura. I'd say more like in terms of passion, this guy exudes passion. And we all have seen it in international play. And there are points during the season where it's on and it's really, really off for the area this year. Again, he's another player that I was expecting a lot more of because he's one of my favorite players in this draft. I kind of liken him a little bit in some aspects to, I guess him and Carbonneau are in the same category where supremely talented players can take over games. I think Malcolm Spence even more so. He can really just shift the balance of any game. And he's proven it sometimes in the season, but he'll have off games and he'll have a lot of off games.
Yeah.
But I think to Brock's point one more time, the U18s are going to reveal a lot. And I think he is going to be somebody that is going to have a hot performance and people are going to have to weigh that. Hey, great performer, really passionate guy, but game to game, regular season, what are we getting here? And I really like the player. I'm very optimistic for him, but that's something that a lot of people are going to be taking into consideration with him.
Consistency is an issue. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think his line mates also need to be play drivers. They need to be more higher energetic because you can see, same with Porter Martone, where they're kind of invisible sometimes. And then sometimes it's this guy is incredibly skilled. So same with Carbonneau. I was kind of, I'm higher on Spence than Carbonneau, but I think Carbonell has a higher, kind of has a lower floor, but Spence has a higher upside floor ratio. So I can see him playing more of an NHL role than Carbonell. But if Carbonell hits, you're getting a supremely talented, raw, skilled player. So I think that Spence has that floor as well.
Yeah, and I think like for me, the player that was on my eyes for the Habs pick here, and a guy that I was very much considering as well instead of Jackson Smith earlier, was Carter Bear, who you prefaced as well. I think that in terms of upside swing, being a Brendan Gallagher replacement down the road of just being the heart and soul that beats the beating heart for the team night in, night out, regular season or playoffs, doesn't matter. Of course, the lacerated Achilles is a really ugly injury,
Yeah.
so fingers crossed he can get back to full form and full health. But in terms of the playmaking dynamism as well, there's a lot to like there that I think the Habs could really use. But Malcolm Spence, in terms of character and overall that passion, he fits in great with the Habs too.
I think the reason Carter Bear would be there is because of the lacerated Achilles, and the reason that the Habs might not pick him is also because of the lacerated Achilles. That's such a tough injury, and I believe that he's going to come back stronger than ever. But I think that when there's Malcolm Spence and Carter Bear, it's like it's kind of even, and then you have the lacerated Achilles, so I think it jumps Malcolm Spence up there. So that was kind of my thought process, but I agree with you.
Okay, so Malcolm Spence, 16, Montreal. Up next is Columbus, and that is Brock.
Yeah, that's me. So, I mean, Columbus it's going to be really interesting to see what they do here in the first round. They've taken such a huge step forward this year. Do they opt for maybe a safer, less risky bet who can move quickly to help them sort of solidify their middle six or their second pairing? Also, you got the risk they took with Lindstrom last year and how he hasn't really played this year. Do they take, again, less of a risk this year, just making sure that they hit on a player? I think there could be a need for a power winger, somebody who can play sort of a support game, maybe another big physical defender. Yes, they drafted Charlie Elick high last year, but I think there are a few guys in this range that could work for them. One of the main guys I think that could be a great fit for them would be Carter Bear, but I just don't see any chance that they take Bear with what happened with Lindstrom this year. It's just a risk that I can't see them taking. So I'm going to go with Kashan Aitchison. I think that he's somebody that is going to fit in really nicely with the group that they have. He's going to make them a lot more difficult to play against moving forward, help insulate some of the skill that they've got on the back end. And I think that he's somebody that has had such a really strong year in the OHL, helping to sort of round out his profile than more than just that throwback physical type of defender. He's somebody that is so smart off the puck as an offensive player, and I think those types of things do translate well to the NHL level. I think he's going to play a variety of different roles, and I think he's going to be a really safe, long-time NHL defender, and I think that's going to provide a lot of value to Columbus at this pick.
Stole the pick right out for me. I picked next.
Stole your pick, eh, Linc? It happens sometimes.
Well, I guess we'll talk about it when I talk about my. Does anyone else want to talk about this pick a little bit? But I'll talk about it when the Flames come up next. But great pick. Again, we talk about passion. Another very passionate player. Last year, people were buzzing about Stian Solberg. He wasn't one of my favorite prospects, but all the things they were saying about Stian Solberg, I see in Kashan Aitchison and more. The offensive upside, the 20 goals, the big physical presence, and I also like how his defense has been rounding out. He's becoming a better. Yeah, I gotta really think about who the Flames are going to take here because look,
time out.
No, I got my pick. It's going to be a reach, but great pick there.
We got Kashan Aitchison at 17 to Columbus, and now Linc is flustered, and he gets to pick next. So who we taking there, Linc?
I don't know if you might have this guy teed up, but I'm going to take a little bit of a reach here. I'm going to say that. So Logan Hensler and Logan Hensler and a smorgasbord of other defensemen were kind of my pick here for Calgary. Looking at Calgary's depth, their defense is not good, and they recently have been picking guys like Henry Muse, Zane Parekh, Etienne Morin with their higher picks. So they're covered offensive wise for defensemen. They need some stability on the back end. They need some size on the back end. They need some physicality on the back end. They need someone who's going to throw around people on the back end. So I think we're going to be taking the second American defenseman taken in this draft so far. And I'm going to be reaching for Carter Amico here I'm going to be taking Carter Amico here for the Calgary Flames. And I really, again, we've been talking about injury the whole year. He has been wiped out for a long time with a leg injury. I think he broke his leg totally. Yeah. And before that, he was playing absolute excellent defense for the USNTDP. I thought he was really one of the best defensemen in the entire just draft before his injury. Very physical player. One of the big things that I just noticed when he was playing against the college, when the USNTD was playing against college, his physicality, his just bite to his game was noticeable on and off the tape. I love him. I really can't see him falling outside the first round, despite the injury that he's had. He's going to Boston University, which is a place where I really think he's going to fit in really well with a lot of defensemen there. And it's also going to be very, very telling how he reacts with, again, really solid two-way and offensively minded defenseman in Tom Wielander, if he's still there, Cole Hudson, if he's still there. So I really like the development path he's on. I really like the physicality. I love the traits. Again, he's a very raw prospect. He's got to, again, it's a reach for a reason, but I think Calgary needs defensemen. And yeah, I know this is going to shake up the draft a little bit, but I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. So you guys are going nuts in the chat.
This is not a first round pick. That's my analysis. I don't think he's a first rounder. I didn't think he was a first rounder before he got hurt, and I definitely don't think he's a first rounder after he got hurt. There's a lot of development there to come with his mobility. I think if you're looking for a right-hand defenseman, Blake Fiddler is the play here. There's a lot more safety in that pick. He doesn't have the injury history. He's a lot more mobile. He has a better offensive game. Linc, I've liked your first couple of picks. I think this is a swing and a miss.
I'm taking a bit of a. I will say to defend myself. With Fiddler, there's a lot. I don't know. With Fiddler, I was a little bit like. I don't know. Sometimes he just like he doesn't decision wise. He's been getting a lot better, but sometimes decision wise, I've been a little bit scared with Fiddler. Amico, somebody I wanted to put into a first round a lot. So I don't know. I'm reaching here. I'm thinking about it. Like I think him and Fiddler are very close in my list. But I think in terms of what Calgary needs, I think this is more of a stability pick. I do like Amico. I think he is a first round pick. But I am saying this is a bit of a reach here. So I think he brings more defense than Fiddler would.
Zach Senyshyn and Jacob Zaboral worthy here.
It's not that bad.
Yeah,
I like Carter.
I like him
a
too.
lot this year.
I like him too.
Like he's a smart, rangy, good transition defender. His handling skill, honestly, really, really good. There's a lot to build with that, I think, moving forward in terms of getting around a single forechecker, that like single problem-solving ability. He can't like stick handle a phone booth between multiple opponents, but one wave of pressure he can do quite easily. And that intelligence, the offensive overall distribution got a lot better in like the month that he played this year. Like the first month of the NTDP season was ugly for every player on the ice, but he was one of the few players holding things together by like the couple strands that remained. And now, end of the season, NTDP is looking really good in terms of having become quite cohesive as a team, playing together as a unit rather than a bunch of individuals. But Amico at the beginning of the season was one of the only players in my viewings who was already trying to play as a team rather than playing on his own. And I think definitely has some second pairing potential, but the injury was a really weird and ugly one. Like it was just a nothing play, activating up the right side, dangle around one opponent, just put his weight on his right leg, and it just something gave way, and he just needed surgery like the next day. It was so ugly in terms of like, I found with injuries, sometimes the more inconspicuous it looks, the more worrisome it is in a sense. And with Amico, I have some of those feelings, but overall, I think a player who at least should be still in conversation from maybe 30 to like 40 range. I think top 20, maybe a little bit high, or top 25, but still a player I've liked a lot, just to serve a little bit of a counter argument here to Rocco, because he is a really solid prospect, but we haven't seen him play since November, of course.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is just how the NDTP works, right? They're a team that's going to balance lines, balance ice time, balance responsibility until the end of the year, right? So players like Amico tend to get a lot better. Their defensive prospects get a lot better over the course of the year because of that. I think that we probably didn't get a chance to see, what he's truly capable of as an offensive player. I think there was enough sort of hints that was going to develop, maybe more than what we've currently seen, obviously. So he's a first rounder for me. I like the physical tools. I actually don't have a problem with this skating, Rocco. I think he skates perfectly fine for the type of role that he's going to play. I would have been really intrigued to see what his game kind of developed into over the course of the year. I think that we could have easily seen sort of an EJ Emery like trajectory for him. And I think that, we saw Emery go where he did last year in a deeper draft. I think Amico is sort of a similar kind of player. And I think there's definitely a chance, even with the injury, that he's still somebody taken in the top 27, 26.
And he has more offense than Emery ever did.
I don't want to sound like I dislike the prospect, because I don't. I do like him, and I think he's going to, he's a guy that screams NHL player. it's unexciting. The upside's limited and the injury's scary. And it's just rich for me at this point. I do have a point in the draft where I love this pick, but it would probably be in the early second round rather than the middle of the first. And it's not, I just don't want to sound like I'm ragging on him, because I do really like the player. I just don't like him here.
I will preface this by saying Hensler and Aitchison were my two perfect picks at this spot. I think Aitchison, if he falls, this is the put the cherry on top. This is I think that's where I was really envisioning this. But again, I can see Fiddler going here as well. I think Fiddler, obviously, they're going to love having him so close, developing just up the road in Edmonton. But I still am very confident about Carter Amico.
I think this could be a trade down spot too if they wanted Amico. Just pick up some more assets as well. That would be cool.
I liked him better than Rocco did. I do think there is a very easy template of an NHL player here. It's just what's the upside, right? And we tend to get a little scared of injuries. I know I do, especially with my rankings. Injuries maybe impact things a little more than other people. I'm always really worried about them. I mean, he's a big body. He throws his weight around too. That's another thing I really like, that he's really hard to play against. So you can see that template there. So, I mean, I wouldn't have taken him there, but I don't think, again, if you think he's a, right shot D, it's going to, be on your team for 10 plus years. I think there's no way that's a bad pick here. That's fine.
All right, moving on. Rocco, Ottawa. That's why I put you in this position. Let's see what you got there for the Sens.
Don't mess up, Rocco.
Honestly, I think it's tough to mess up here. Now, the thing with the Sens is they're another team that's in a position to kind of take the best player available. And Carter Bear's just slipping here, isn't he? The injury's scaring people away, because this is probably the obvious pick, and Blake Fiddler wouldn't be a bad secondary obvious pick option here for Ottawa. But I'm going to go with someone that I got to watch my very first game of the year in Gatineau, and I fell in love with the way this guy plays the game then, and he hasn't let me down since. And in this first playoff game, to nobody's surprise, certainly not mine, he was a first star, goal, assist, hammering guys, driving the play, creating excellent vision. He's a really, really, really underrated hockey sense. He gets a lot of flack because of his skating, but I think his skating is absolutely fine. He's taken leaps and bounds. His decision-making has come a long way. I've watched this guy a ton. I'm very, very, very confident he's going to be a hell of a top 9 player that nobody wants to play against, who could probably play all 3 positions on any of your 4 lines. And he's just an absolute animal from the Rouyn-Noranda Huskies. Wild Bills on him.
Great pick. Love the player. So physical, so much fun. But I think the Sens would be a great landing spot too. He plays the style of hockey that the Sens have always been looking for at the draft too.
As a Sens fan, this is exactly who I want them to take. So I'd be very excited. I'd be going to get a jersey right now.
Yes.
Literally, our last mock draft, you were super mad at me because I think someone took this guy right before your pick with the
I took it for Montreal.
There you go.
Yeah,
and this guy, again, we talk about passion. I love this guy's passion. I love his work ethic. Despite his lackluster skating, this guy he'll flail around the ice. He'll dive for pucks. He'll do whatever. He is a board menace, and I love this guy. Worst case scenario, you're looking at someone who sticks long-term on your third or fourth line as just a do-it-all guy. I'm a huge fan of Bill Zahn, and I think he is 100% like he's going to be in the league. He's someone that you're going to get NHL games out of, so I'm really excited with him. It's just the offensive upside and a lot of other things that I'm concerned about. But again, he's a top 20 guy for me. If I wanted to go with a forward, he's who I would have taken with that last pick. Love Bill Zahn.
Rocco got his boy, Bill Zonin, to Ottawa at 19. All right, Sebastian, you're up, correct?
Indeed, I am. And the St. Louis Blues, I think, would have quite liked a player like Bill Zonin as well, but he was not the number one guy on my board. I mean, the Blues have an interesting, I think, drafting strategy. Last year at 16th overall, they went out and picked Adam Jiricek and used their second and third picks on bigger defensemen as well with Colin Ralph and Lucas Fisher. So I wouldn't be shocked if they end up going with the forward this time around. You already have players like Snuggerud and Dvorsky coming through the ranks that'll be playing NHL minutes very soon. I mean, Snuggerud already just signed his ELC, and Dvorsky's playing good minutes in the AHL. But I'm going to stop the fall here for Carter Bear and his injury. I think in terms of identity, in terms of hunger, the utter violence with which he plays, and combining that with elite level playmaking tools, high end intelligence, and a never say die attitude, I think that the Blues fan base and organization would really appreciate his approach to the game of hockey. And while it is certainly a risk with a lacerated Achilles, when you're outside the top 19 and you're in that 20 range, especially in a draft class like this one, where we already have discussed a little bit, there's a pretty distinct drop off in skill at like between 20 and 25. And Carter Bear for me is my personal 10th overall player in light of the injury still as well. He's a player I would personally take a risk on, and I think the Blues will do just that because boy, oh boy, is he my favorite player to watch in this year's draft class.
Phenomenal value there.
Even with the injury. I mean, at 20th overall, you take that swing all day, every day.
For sure.
I agree with you taking the swing, and I think he could fall even further with the injury. I'm someone who's not as high on Carter Bear. I'm someone who is kind of worried about what he brings offensively to the table at the next level, because obviously he's proven what he can do in the WHL. But getting him at 20, it's a great pick right there. And he's another guy that he's going to be playing NHL games. He's going to be somebody that's going to slot in your lineup. Worst case scenario, he's a heart and soul guy on your fourth or third line. I compare him all the time to Brendan Gallagher, and that's just someone you love to see, you love to root for. And I hope that he comes back strong from what happened with him lacerated Achilles, right?
Yeah.
Skate
blade, really ugly.
It's just, I know, I saw it. Was just a shame. Really just not great. And to somebody who, again, I was already a little bit kind of questionable about with the skating, it's not a good look. But I think he's someone who will fall, but he has the potential more than anybody to really just prove a lot of people wrong. I do like him, I will say.
I think to add a little bit onto the injury with him, I think one of the reasons I'm a little bit less concerned with him specifically with a lacerated Achilles compared to other prospects is because his skating has always been defined by high stride rate. He forces his way up the ice. It's all energy. It's all effort. It hasn't really been down to the mechanics in terms of getting from A to B. And I don't think that he's going to project as like a transition dynamic carrier anyways in the NHL. He's going to be more of an off-puck, middle-driven, spark plug kind of player who just gets into the dirty areas offensively and brings a bunch of playmaking skill. I think that playmaking is really what will define him offensively alongside of that motor at the NHL level. And in terms of Brendan Gallagher comp as a heart and soul player, definitely, but swap all the goal scoring that Gallagher has brought in his career for playmaking, and I think you have a decent comparison there.
Excellent. All right. So we got Carter Bear to St. Louis at number 20, Columbus. Darren, you are up.
I mean, I guess I have to take Blake Fiddler here because I guess they got a good D pairing here. This is great. I love this guy. I think his side-to-side movement as a big guy is excellent. There's lots of intangible to this player. Big right-hand shot defenseman, physical, shuts down one side of the ice. I actually don't think his decision-making is that bad. Now, there's some flaws maybe with handling. Yes, there is. I think you can get away with that, though. I think he can improve there. I think this is a great right-hand defenseman. Again, do I think he's going to be a stud? No. But do I think he's going to be a solid, probably insulator-type defenseman, can play with a really, a star defenseman, can play on your second pair? Yes, I do. I think this guy could play for a long time. I think he can, definitely play on your penalty kill, play 5-on-5 pretty well. I don't know about the power play. I don't know what I expect offensively. But this is the best, again, I'm taking the best player available here. I think he's, there's too much distance between him and the rest of the guys that I have left that I have to take him here. And they, again, they just traded Juracek too. So, this kind of replaces the big right-hand defenseman in their system. So I can't really take anyone else here. That's my pick, Blake Fiddler.
I gifted Fiddler on a silver platter to you. So, I'm glad you took him. I think that's a great pairing. Him and Aitchison, because Aitchison was picked with the Columbus, but yeah, he was. Like you said it all. I'm a little bit, the reason I think he's falling more like past the 20 range on like a lot of people's lists. I'm a little bit worried about what like kind of defenseman he is. Sometimes it's a little bit lost. And again, I think to kind of counteract that with that criticism, I think he has one of the highest upsides in the draft. 6'4", to skate the way that he does, to shoot the way that he does, like the offensive inclination there. It's really something kind of special, I would say, for someone that big. And again, it's hard to pass him up when he's right there on a silver platter. So good pick.
Well, the other thing with him too is even internationally, you've seen him play, and he steps up. He's a captain, on their Halinka team. There's a guy here, and every time I've watched him play, it's kind of, I wouldn't say that it stands out. It's just kind of a ho-hum, plays a pretty good game. There's a couple flaws I'm a little bit worried about. But again, if I'm picking him at, where are we, 21 here, I think I'm pretty happy with that pick. Because as we were talking about before, I think this is probably right around where that drop-off is probably right around this spot. So if I can get a guy that I have ranked in my top 20, I'm pretty happy with that.
So Blake Fiddler at 21 to Columbus, and then now it is myself at 22 for the Flyers.
This is where it gets interesting.
That, you know what? Like I said, basically this is where I think that the drop off is. This is where you kind of go personal preference, or the Flyers probably could use a D or a forward. I like, being with McKean's, and we do have a player that we kind of have higher than other players, and being one of the youngest players in the NCAA, Cullen Potter. I just like his game, the speed, that speed that he possesses. How do you turn him down at 22nd overall? And like I said, being one of the youngest players in the NCAA, and got to see him last year with the NTDP. So, have a lot of kind of faith in his game and whatnot. And he is responsible, 200-foot player and that speed. And there is some offensive upside there. So I don't see how the Flyers can pass on Cullen Potter at 22. Honestly, he's just too good to let go past this point.
Completely agree.
One of the best skaters,
yeah.
Well, probably the top skill guy left for sure. I think you're looking at, in terms of offensive ability here, if not one of, for sure, the few guys remaining with some pretty serious first or second line upside as a player. And you don't love the size, but if he was 6'2", he'd be a top 10 pick. So you're getting what you're getting in the early 20s in a draft, like you said, where it starts to fall off after this point. Taking a pretty high skill guy there, and Philly comes out, starts with Desnoyers, like you took Desnoyers there. So you got an extremely safe, bigger two-way guy. So Potter might be a pretty good running mate for him, actually.
Guy's a really good player. It's literally the only reason he's here is his size. That's really, really it. So, I mean, a guy like him could translate. His speed is quite good, and he causes a lot of, actually what I know is causes a lot of problems for checking out for the other team. For a smaller guy, you don't see that often. So, I mean, it can translate. There is.
Is he the anti-Lakovic?
Yeah, they're not afraid of taking like smaller centers, like they took Lachenko last year. Like Denver Barkey's currently in their system. They won't shy. This new Flyers regime is not going to shy away from taking smaller players. I just think that Potter maybe has some wing potential. I think that would be pretty interesting with this pick. But again, you're getting the skill player here. I think
they'd have to move some pieces to the wing for sure. I mean, but at the end of the day, if you look at the skill level and the rest of the draft here, there's not really much left in terms of
winger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. All right.
Yeah.
He's also performing at a level that, you know, he jumped up to play at this level. Like you do like to see that. Like he should be on the U.S. National Development Program still. So I mean, he took that gamble, took that risk, and it's turned out for him. I mean, you do like to see that just in general. Very happy with that.
Do you think there's any chance we see him at the U18s, given how he already spurned that program? I mean, they could use him, but I just can't see it happening.
Look at what happened with Musty. There's no way.
Right.
Yeah. Even though dynamism is the thing they need the most right now.
Right.
All right. Who's up next? We got Nashville, and that is Anthony, right?
Yep. So there's two players here that I would take, but it's between two. I think that the Predators could take Ravensburgen if they want to recoup what they had in Askarov. I mean, I think they're kind of regretting that trade now because of how bad they've played. I mean, no offense to them. They've just been terrible. But I'm going to actually take Cameron Schmidt, and I actually think that the drop-off ends like here. Like this is where it starts, but Cameron Schmidt is, if like you said with Colin Porter, if he was 6'2", this guy might be the number one pick. He has top 10 skill. Craig Button had him in his top 8. What he's doing is absolutely incredible, but at 5'7" and 157, it's just so hard to project him into the NHL. We've seen comparables in size and skill, or you can't really teach size, but the skill that he possesses, you can't teach that either. And it's very hard to pass on Cameron Schmidt at 23. I mean, like you said, there is a drop off, and if he does bust, he does bust. But this guy could be in your top line, power play, weapon, top 6 for sure. I just think that there's just too much value in this pick.
Unfortunately, I would fully agree with you. I think he was a player that I had underlined for my Canes pick coming up in a couple slots because I think he has Hurricanes written all over him. But I think, yeah, as you mentioned, he was like the last player before my drop off as well in terms of having that true game breaking ability. And in this draft class where you're picking basically between either that in this slot or a likely third line number 4, number 5 defenseman, this makes a bunch of sense.
He might be the best draft.
The shot, the skill, oh my, like he's shot.
Might have the best shot.
It is the best
and the fastest player in the CHL potentially this year as well. He has so many attributes.
I hope he grows a couple more inches.
We got Cameron Schmidt at 23 to Nashville. And so now we move on to Brock in Chicago.
Yeah, so one guy that I had underlined here that you guys thankfully did not pick, so I didn't have to panic like Linc did and pivot. And that's Jack Murtagh of the NDDP. I think one thing Chicago is going to try to do is insulate some of their high-end talent with support players who can play with pace, who can shoot the puck, who can bring some physical intensity. That's not to say that Murtagh's a power forward, but he does play with some ferocity. And I think that he's the type of player that they could really look at. He skates well, and we know that's something Chicago really looks at. And I think they've also had a bit of an NA bias the last few years of the draft. And I think he fits in really well with their program. I think he's had a really good year. I think he's been maybe consistently the best player on that U18 program this year. And I think he could potentially slot in really well with some of the players they have in their top 6 currently after a few seasons in the NCAA.
Yeah, I think he's a great fit with the Blackhawks. I've loved the goal scoring, the pace, and just like the violence and the intensity he's had in his game all year long. And even before the US NTDP gelled as a team this year, he was a very just like functional, good player night in, night out. Even before things started like really working and churning together, he can be pretty effective on his own on an island, which he was for quite a bit this year, alongside Cole McKinney. It was kind of those two guys alone doing all the offense. Richard Gallant played on that line, but he's a real step down in terms of dynamic skill, and I don't think I'd personally draft him this year, but those two players have definitely been driving that offense. But yeah, Brock, as you mentioned, in terms of insulating the softer skill guys, I think Murtagh would be great to pair with a guy like Oliver Moore, for instance, where Moore can bring that raw north-south speed down the middle, that defensive ability, and open up a lot of space for Murtagh to use his shot and also just like be a spark plug and just throw the body around, because he does that very, very effectively.
Yeah, the Blackhawks have prioritized speed and also centers in their recent drafts. And to your point, Oliver Moore is going to be debuting in 20 minutes. So I just think that would be an incredible fit. That's a really good pick. And I think BU is a program that they've drafted before. I mean, with Ryan Green, he's going to be a big riser next year and for this draft, but he's going to have some hype going for him in the NCAA.
Yeah.
Nice. So we got Jack Murtagh at 24 to Chicago, LA. And we head over to Linc for this one.
Yeah, I love the Jack Murtagh pick. Just wanted to shout that out there. I'm a big fan of him. LA, similarly, is in a position where they can just take a swing on a guy that I think that one of the bigger things that they need some point production. They've kind of just been first-round exits perennially every single year, and I just don't really see a lot of dynamism in the offense. So it's time for them to take a swing. It's time for them to look at somebody with a lot of offensive upside. And down here at the end of the draft, there isn't a lot. However, there is one guy who fell really far at the beginning of the year, and he's slowly climbing his way back up from Sweden. Jacob East Wozniak. I think he's somebody that could definitely climb back into the first round. Again, effort issues aside, he has a lot of upside in terms of point production and goal scoring and distributing. He's making a lot of just better plays as the year's been going on. I've seen a complete turnaround. Somebody who at the beginning of the year looked kind of hopeless, looks really lost in the offensive zone, looked just absolutely atrocious in the defensive zone. He's getting better with every single game as I've been watching him. I love a lot of the decisions he's making now, especially with the puck on his stick, with the puck off his stick. I think you're finding somebody who, again, I value when you progress throughout the entirety of the year. I think I don't know if he's eligible for the U18s, but if he is, that's going to be very telling as well. I'm a big fan of him coming back into the first round. And I think seeing with how Los Angeles drafted last year with Liam Greentree and how that turned out, that's a big skill player that I would say, took a risk on last year, and he's returned dividends. I think you're going to see something not like close to Greentree, but a little bit similar. I think he's going to pay dividends next year.
I like this pick. I really like him. Again, at the start of the year, a lot of the perception was, again, there were some effort issues, some inconsistency issues. Since Christmas, every time I've watched him, I think he's been fairly consistent. He's been physical in a lot of his games. He actually can drive play in the offensive zone, which is also nice to see for a bigger body guy. Can shoot the puck. I don't think he's terrible defensively. So, I mean, there is a guy here, especially if you're looking later in the first round. There's a high upside offensive talent here. And again, as you said, he's improved as the year's gone on. So, I mean, I like getting a guy like that that's improved. So I'm a fan of him, and I believe he is eligible for the under 18. So that is a guy that we would be very interested in seeing. That'll be a good barometer for him. That Sweden team should be pretty good, I think. So
it's a great time to take a swing on his talent level, because his talent level is higher than pick whatever we're at, 23, 24. I feel that can be some similarities. Now, not in terms of the physicality, because Wozniak's more physical, but in terms of the consistency, very much like Lakovic, where some games he just leaves you wanting more, but the skill and the upside and the physical tools are plainly obvious. And I think to get him at this point, when we're basically out of, if not close to out of, quote unquote, sure things, great time to take a swing on a guy that could score 25 or 30 with his shooting ability.
I think my biggest concern with him, and you guys can disagree, but I haven't liked him internationally for Sweden at pretty much every event. And that kind of concerns me a little bit because I think of him as more of a support guy at the NHL level. And if he's not able to be a support guy at international events to other high-end skilled players, how does that translate to the NHL level if that consistency isn't there, right? And that's where I kind of get these like Brendan Perlini vibes from him. And that scares me. I think there's a lot to like there. And that's not to throw Perlini under the bus. I mean, he was a decent NHL player for a few years, but that ultimately was his undoing, right? And I know you could probably say the same things about my pick earlier with Lakovic. They are similar players. It's a great point. My colleague at McKean's, Derek Neumeyer, loves Yves Wozniak, and we've had some disagreements there because there are some concerns there that I have in his ability to translate his skill set to the NHL level. And I think, as you said, Linc, the U18s are going to be really big for him. I think that's going to be sort of one last chance for him to prove that he deserves to be mentioned in the high-end part of this draft like he was coming into the year, because the physical tools are outstanding. And Sweden has a real chance to take home gold at that event. In my opinion, a very wide open year for that event. And he's going to have to be someone that doesn't have to drive the bus, but is there, with one hand on the wheel. And I want to see how he adjusts, and I want to see that game elevated, because I have seen better play in Sweden in his actual league play. I think that's been there, but internationally, I still find myself struggling with him, especially at the recent Nations tournament. I thought he was very underwhelming there. When other members of that Swedish team, I thought, really had a strong tournament, I thought that he kind of faded to the background. So that's my biggest concern with him, and I don't know if I'm alone there.
No, I agree with you. Oh, sorry. No,
you go ahead.
I wanted to just quickly say I was painstakingly close to taking Milton Gastreen here. Like, it was like almost a flip of a coin. If one of you guys doesn't take him with the next few picks, I'm gonna claw my eyes out. You're absolutely correct. He's got to prove a lot at this tournament. I think he's been outworked. He's been outplayed by a lot of those players in the international level, which I'm not gonna lie to you, I was kind of expecting, seeing his first half. But again, seeing the league play that we've seen out of him since Christmas, I'm optimistic to think that he's going to show us a different Jakubis Wozniak at this U18. So we'll see.
He has a lot of confidence. He compared himself to Kirill Kaprizov, which I really liked, that comparison. Well, but I thought it was interesting. But he's heard the noise about scouts telling him that he needs to work on his intensity as well as his engagement in games. And that's one of the things that he's actually cued in on this season. So the fact that he has been that good since December, with that, means that he's listening to the advice given. And I think that he actually might be a first. In my book, he's a first-round pick, but I think he could be a mid-first-round pick if a team falls in love with him because of how that drop-off hits. And I actually think that he might be closer to the in those before the drop off than outside of it, but he's like on the cusp, like the outskirts.
I agree with that, and again, I like the intensity thing that you bring up there. Mm-hmm. It's been noticeable that he's made more of a commitment to that, because you see him early in games trying to get engaged physically, and that to me screams intensity. That's what you want from those guys. Again, I've mentioned my bias before. I really do like it when I see some of these bigger guys actively looking for physicality. That really, to me, I love that. So, I mean, that again, from that change from earlier in the year, from December onward, it's good to see.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at with him.
All right. Jacob Wozniak, 25. Philadelphia, this is Rocco, am I right?
Yeah, and this is tough because now our exercise is a mock draft, so I'm going to look at the previous picks for Philadelphia here because this is their third pick of this draft, and they went with Dane Wyatt and Colin Potter. And the selection of Potter, it kind of eliminates the guy that I would like to take here, which is Ben Kindle. I'm a huge fan of him, but I also wouldn't want to take two guys under 5'11" in the first round in the same draft. They took two forwards. I'd like them to take someone with a little size, and geez, I think Will Horkoff would be a phenomenal fit here. And I think Peyton Kettles would be a great fit here too. And these are two guys that are mostly second round grades by most people that I personally feel deserve to be in the first round due to the size and smarts. You could say that about both of them, honestly. I'm gonna go with Will Horkoff here. You put him on a line with two other skilled guys, and I think he could be the perfect complementary piece to go be the gopher on that line. There's a lot of Malcolm Spence. There's a lot of Bill Zonin in Will Horkoff, and those are two guys that I'm quite high on. I think his hockey IQ is phenomenal. I've rarely seen him make a mistake, and I've rarely seen him make a glaring mistake, which is really important, especially he's playing in the NCAA against older guys, and took him a little bit to get comfortable. He went over to that team kind of midway through the year, and he didn't play a ton of games with them, but there's a few I watched, and he shows some flashes where the size and his ability to protect the puck, he's phenomenal hands in front of the net. I think he could be a really good guy to stand in front of the goalie on the power play and bang some home, and I think he's a great candidate to play with two guys who are maybe a lot more skilled than him, while also allowing you a very, very, very high floor because of his size and intelligence and his ability to move around the ice and play physical. There's a high floor player here, and I think there's maybe a little bit more offensive upside than he's been getting credit for. And Mark, I don't even know if you have a video lined up of him, but Will Horkoff is my pick.
No, I don't. So went off the board a little bit there.
I will say, as a fan, if Danny is going to go off the board, I don't think there's anybody else I would want to go off the board for. Maybe Shane Van Saggy, actually. I would, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm a big Van Saggy guy. But Will Horkoff is somebody that, again, it's been hard for me not to fall in love with him. Like, he's been playing some great hockey once now that he's over in Michigan. However, again, you have to recognize what his role is. Again, he's not going to be the moon for everybody. He's going to be kind of, you're sitting in front of the net and just and tap in some points, which honestly the Flyers are going to need some big presence with that. I'm a big fan of Horkoff for what he's done, especially since coming over to Michigan. I mean, how rare is it to see somebody leave the NPDP midway through the season and just make the jump up to college hockey and actually stick? So, I mean, he's someone who's definitely going to be in the first round. I might not have him ranked in my first round, but if the Flyers are going to reach for somebody, and I guess Van Saggy isn't available, I really like Horkoff in this position.
Yeah, and I think Van Saggy now is he's becoming more of a first round pick. So I saw him ranked 32 in one of the big outlets. So I think he's getting his notice for sure.
He's been in the first round at Elite Prospects for at least like 4 months for us. Like he's been perpetually in those conversations.
You guys do it right over there.
Your pick, actually, right, Sebastian?
It is indeed, and it's the Carolina Hurricanes who are up. And if there's any team in the NHL who doesn't care about size or style or fit or need of what they have, but just go for pure value on draft day, and they can always flip these pieces later down the road, it's the Carolina Hurricanes. They go for who they think will become or has the best chance at becoming the best NHL player in any given slot. And I think that leaves 3 very, very good options here for the Hurricanes. The first two, Braden Coots and Cameron Reed, undersized guys. Reed, one of my favorite intelligent mobile defensemen in this draft class, playing with the Kitchener Rangers in the OHL. And Braden Coots, who just is incessant energy in the WHL and has shown quite a bit of handling skill this season as well. And in flashes reminds me of a player like Grayson Sauchin. But the player I think that they are going to go for in this slot, if available, is the player with the second most points in this year's draft class in the regular season, behind only Michael Misa and a single point ahead of Porter Martone and Jake O'Brien, and that is Benjamin Kindle of the Calgary Hitmen, who, with his dynamic playmaking ability, he's highly creative, very, very intelligent player who has single-handedly been leading the offense for the Hitmen alongside of Tulk, his line mate, Oliver Tulk. I think those two are like 30 points ahead of third place in scoring on that team. It's been a two-man show all season long. And for a draft-eligible player to be doing that this season and not just be scoring, but doing so through intelligent, methodical play rather than just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. I think Kindle fits what the Carolina Hurricanes want to build, has a lot of elements that they would like a bunch. And while they have a lot of right wingers, they have a lot of prospects at every single position. So there's already a wealth no matter where I'm picking here. And I think that Kindle would give them a lot of pause to pass on at this point in the draft.
That's a great pick there. And like I said, that would have been my pick to Philadelphia had Colin Potter not gone right. I'm not taking two guys under 5'10" back to back. Kindle has probably top 5 offensive vision, hockey sense in this draft. He outsmarts guys on a regular basis. I think he's just getting started on what he could do. He could be the Tarek Parasak this year, where he goes a lot higher than people think.
I think Parasak's an interesting comparison in terms of that intelligence and just the raw passing ability, but I think that like the skating's a lot better with Kindle. I get less heebie-jeebies with Kindle than I did with Parasak last year. Last year I had the bad feelings in terms of like, I don't know if this is going to work, even though a lot of what I'm seeing in terms of the intelligence and the methodical play is very, very good. My colleague Hattie Kalakash loved Parasak all year long, and we're just going back and forth, and I'm like, I'm sorry, man. You can't convince me. I wouldn't pick him in the first, but you go for it. And then we're at the draft in Vegas, and he goes like 17th overall. It's like, of course, sure. Why not?
I watched you guys all year last year, and Hattie, I just can remember every Hattie just being like, I love Parasak. He's great. I'm like, oh, man. So
I'm like, okay, sure, I guess.
Hattie also broke the news for Seneca for me, like 2 hours before the draft, that he was going third.
We were hearing some rumblings around the media floor there. Mm-hmm. Like you saw a lot of people starting to float the name Seneca around. So I think a lot of people were kind of tuning in around that time before the draft. I know earlier on in the day, there was like a bunch of reports of like Z Bouillon's the guy at 3 for sure, 100%. Yeah. Don't doubt it. And then an hour later, wait, no, they're not going defenseman whatsoever. They're going with Seneca instead. So
everyone heard
they hide everything, you know.
Everyone heard about the Seneca thing except Seneca based on his reaction while he got drafted.
He did not see Hattie's tweet, I can guarantee you.
No. That's funny.
All right. Yeah. So we got Ben Kindle, 27 to Carolina. San Jose. Darren, you got the floor for last pick.
Like Rocco thinks there's a guy I want to take here. I'm not going to take him here simply because I believe the Sharks also have 2 fairly high second rounders here, at least one, which I believe they'll take a right shot D. There's a bunch kind of available here. I think they'll take it with that first pick they have in the second round. I think they'll take a home run swing here with the pick. And all right, I'm just going to do it just to cause a ruckus. Alexander Zurovsky out of Russia. And this is literally a home run swing. His handling skill, I believe, is second in the class to McQueen. I think, Roger McQueen has the best hands in the draft just with the size that he has. Zurovsky's been awesome every game that we've watched him the last couple months. He is dominating in Russia in the junior league. He looks far and away the best player on the ice every time we watch him play. His edge work is actually really good as a skater. Have heard, again, we've heard and seen, again, his straightforward skating isn't great, but when you see his edge work, you can kind of see that his skating can improve, especially he has a lot of strength or a lot of, area to grow as well. He's not that big. I think he's 175 pounds, so he has some room to grow at a 6'1", 6-foot body. He can grow into that and be a stronger player. Don't think he's a hole defensively. He actually is really good in the neutral zone at winning pucks. and he goes to the net to score goals. He isn't kind of a one-trick pony that way. He can go find goals in dirty areas, goes to the net. I know, again, I'm not going to compare him to the player, but he has an ability to score goals around net like a John Tavares does, where he's kind of just standing around and the puck gets to him. Just a rebound and gets on his stick. There is high offensive upside here. But again, we haven't seen it that often. We really haven't seen it at an international level. And, so it's a risk. I think it's one San Jose can take here because they do have another pick coming up a few picks later here. Will they can address maybe a right-hand D with some of the guys available. There's some other guys here that we like. I like Henry Brustevich a lot. That's a guy, again, I'm biased there. I've seen him in London a lot. He plays with Sam Dickinson a lot. I don't think that is a terrible idea for them. But I think maybe they also see there's Peyton Kettle's available. There's David Betkowski available. There's some other right-hand D available here that they can kind of wait it out, and one of them will fall to them there. So I think they take a home run swing here and take Alex Zurovsky.
Obviously, I love this pick. And another guy, boys, we're going off the board here back to back. Mark doesn't have the videos ready. I'm going to give a shameless plug here because me and Boyce just did our most recent episode of the top 5 Russians that are playing over in Russia this year. And Zurovsky was number 1 for both of us. I think his stick handling is insane. I was trying not to swear. His stick handling is insane. And I think his offensive IQ is extremely high, and he's going to get punished. If this guy is playing the CHL, we would be talking him in and around the same region as probably a Kindle or a Spence or a Zonin or Reshny, in around that group of guys. He has that kind of ability. I think there's no doubt he has first-round talent. It's just a matter of someone's going to have the stones to take him out of Russia in the first round. And San Jose is the perfect team to do it. They got depth all up and down their organizational pipeline. They've got a couple early picks in the second round, and they're primed to take a swing on a guy. And I don't see too many names left with as much upside as this guy.
They took Chernishev last year too, right? So there's some comfortable. If they're comfortable taking a Russian guy, I think they have, whoever is in their scouting department obviously has some comfort with these guys. So. I think this is a possibility that he could go here. There's other teams I don't think could take him, but this is one that I think can take him in this slot.
Okay, let's put Zurovsky in at 28 to San Jose. All right, so now we'll do a group pick for the next 4. So Calgary's at 29. Gentlemen, what are we thinking for Calgary at 29?
If I may start, I think the one thing Calgary could really use is some center depth from a prospect perspective. Yes. And one thing they've kind of been drafting a lot in the last little bit are those sort of pro check guys with size. So I see 2 guys on the board in Jack Nesbitt and William Moore, who I think sort of fit the bill as to what Calgary might like in this range. I'm not the biggest Will Moore guy, but I could see Calgary really liking what he brings to the table and his upside. And then Nesbitt, I like a lot. I think he ends up going definitely higher than we've got him currently. I think teams are going to really like that package that he brings to the table. And I think Calgary has drafted a lot out of the OHL and had some success in recent years. So I think there could be some familiarity there. So those are 2 guys that I'd put to the table for all of you.
I was going to say Nesbitt too. I'm in Windsor, so I just saw him play last night actually against the Sioux, and big kid. He's got some room to develop. I think that's the nice thing about Nesbitt. So yeah, I like Nesbitt at this spot.
Yeah, I like Nesbitt as a center name into the ring there. I think Cole McKinney could also be quite attractive as a potential 3C down the line. He's just been so rock solid for the NTDP. But you have 2 very different profiles down the middle there from the program that Calgary could choose from. Will Moore is a guy I've quite enjoyed all season long because he's a very intelligent player, and that intelligence, I think, is very projectable to the next level. But the physical tools make that projection entirely theoretical. We don't know how he's going to evolve and what kind of game he's he's going to play in the NHL as of right now yet. So those question marks will lead to him falling down the draft order a bit. But once you're here at the back end of the first round to get a centerman with actual 2C potential, and I think Will Moore has that upside with a really good shot. He's a very good playmaker, and just that intelligence that I think seeps into every aspect of his game. You're going to have to work on the explosiveness. You're going to have to work on resisting physical contact. I did an entire 30-minute deep dive into his game on my podcast yesterday, so talked about him a lot very recently. But I think it makes a bunch of sense for Calgary in this range. But I'd also be curious to see if the team in here, and I think the one that catches my ears for that would be the Nashville Predators, to look towards Ivan Ryabkin, because I have a lot of questions with this player. He's not in my personal first round because the motor is a huge issue. He's been scoring a lot of goals since coming over to the USHL, but all the goals have been very low pace under very little pressure with a lot of space and time. And he just kind of finds little seams and passes the puck into the net rather than actually shooting. I don't think the shooting mechanics are overly good. He's 200 pounds at like 5'11", but he just chases hits rather than resisting contact in tight. So a lot of growing room, but someone's got to take him here, right?
I got a guy that to throw into the ring here, and I like Nesbitt a lot. I think that's a great pick. When I was looking at bigger forwards for Philadelphia, Horkoff and Nesbitt were the two that I was kind of staring at my screen on where to go. I think that's a great fit here. Now, keeping in mind who Calgary's drafted the last couple of years, last year specifically, Zane Parekis, who I'm thinking of, I think Simon Wang might be a phenomenal partner for him down the road. He's 6'6", 6'7". He can skate like he's 5'10". He's as good of a skater at that size as I've seen, period, not just this year. His four-way mobility is absolutely fantastic. He only moved to Canada a couple of years ago. He's extremely raw, but the upside here is wild. And Calgary has shown a propensity for taking swings on guys, especially early in their, well, they're not admitting it's a rebuild yet. They're calling it a retool, but it's a rebuild. Let's make no mistake. And if you have 3 to 4 to 5 years to wait for a guy, which might be the case with Simon Wang, the dividends could be absolutely off the charts.
I think they are going to go maybe more of a home run swing with the guy. So I don't mind that at all, actually. I mean, I agree though that they do need centermen. Like they do need some center depth in their, in their prospect pool. I just don't. Wang might be the pick there. Actually, I don't mind it there because it's their second pick. So I mean, that could be where they're just we're going to take a swing at a guy. We need high level talent, or at least try to find it. So
just depends on your preference. He wouldn't be in my top 150, I don't think.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. No, honestly,
it's kind of divisions with that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen him play live a bunch of times this year. It just doesn't do it for me.
You either think he's a first rounder or you would never even draft him. And there's no way. I think that the upside is phenomenal. I'm willing to take a swing after pick 25 on him. And some guys like Brock, for example, after 150, well, you might as well say you're just not going to pick him, right? Because he's not going to last that long. So very divisive, and I can see why, because the warts are there. Nesbitt would be a Flames kind of guy, I think.
Nesbitt sounds like a Flames guy, really.
Absolutely.
All right. Nashville?
For Nashville, since they have four,
why not?
Yep, they have 4 picks in the top 35. So you're going to either take Ryabkin, or somebody that I'd like to throw out would be Ravensburgen, because they had traded Askarov. So I think that could be pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Anthony. I think this is a good spot for Ravensburgen. I think Nashville could be a team that looks to, and also, they've obviously loved the WHL in the last half decade. There's going to be a lot of familiarity there with Ravensburgen.
There's nothing wrong with taking a goalie there, especially when it's, they've already had a couple picks. That's more than fine. I'm just going to go and say Semyon Frolov is my favorite goalie in this draft. I like him a little bit better. I like his athleticism a lot better.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just me, but I think Ravensburg does have, number one starter upside. There is definitely upside there.
You get to hold the players' rights way longer coming out of
that too.
And that might matter for a goalie. Boys, you've talked about this at length, but it's a point to mention. You got to sign Ravensburgen in 2 years. Is he ready for the American League? And this is what happens.
NCAA.
I think this is one of the problems. Yeah, NCAA.
It's different now. It's all different now, I think.
Canadian development of goalies is rushing
true.
the
Get him
ball.
to Penn State. We'll take care of him.
Yeah, and I think there's
Yeah.
enough depth in the goaltending position this year that personally I wouldn't take one in round one. There's enough guys, like Darren said. You've got a couple out of Russia. You've got even Kovac, obviously, at Medvedev as well, out of Ontario.
Ivankovic.
Kierenstrom.
Yeah, there's a lot of good goalies in this crop. A lot of guys that I think can be top 75 picks. I think you could easily get one that could be just as good as Ravensburgen in the second or third round. So that personally, I wouldn't take one, but I do agree with Anthony. I think this makes sense. I think he's going to go in round one. I think I would bet that he does. And if a team does jump on him, I think Nashville makes sense.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that there.
Yeah, Van Saggy was another one I thought of for Nashville.
I was about to say Shane Van Saggy. Again, one for, I guess, both Flame picks. For the Flame pick, I would have said, I was trying to shout Van Saggy. Another one is Milton Gostrin. We haven't been talking about in terms of center depth. But Van Saggy, I think to me, he's one of the people that Calgary be taking with this pick. I mean, we talked about it. They have a lot of, it's not Nashville who could take them with this pick. I think they're going to go with a high skill player with a third overall pick, or if they have a third overall pick. I think what you need to do is insulate that as well. Counting on somebody who can, in this draft, in this specific weaker draft, you want to hit on people that are going to be making it to the NHL. And I think Van Saggy 100% will be making it to the NHL. He's somebody who has shown some offensive strides that I never really would have thought were there either. And also, to Milton Gostrin's point, he's a Swede who I think has taken tremendous strides in this draft. He's looked, I think he's the third best Swede in this draft. I think he's really just stood out from the rest of the crowd. I think internationally he's been fantastic. He really, really shined in the last international tournament that he was in. I'm blanking on it right now because we've been doing this for 2 hours. But I've also got to see Gastrin in person. I think he is a lot better skater than he's given credit for. I think he does a lot of things so well. His two-way game is really, really tight. And he's surprisingly a lot better on offense than a lot of people give him credit for. I would say what wards me away from him sometimes is he doesn't look like he has the biggest frame, which is a weird comparison. He looks very, I'd say narrow, which is like a weird comparison. But I really, really love Gastrin, as Mark and Rocco and Darren will tell you. I'm a huge fan of him. I'm going a little nuts here saying that he didn't go in the top 28, but I still think he's someone who could drop off. Also, Nesbitt is a Calgary Flame. Look at what they did with Jacob Battaglia last year, and now he's a signed player for Calgary. I think that is exactly the route that they're trying to go around over there in Calgary. So,
and to throw another name out there for the Preds is Vaslav Nestrasil, who,
sure,
yeah,
I like him.
6'5". And the thing is, before I interviewed him, a funny story is I actually watched Sebastian Ahai's Locked On video to try to figure out his pronunciation over and over, because I was like,
they
I
messed
could
it
not
up.
say his name.
Why are you trusting me as a source? Oh God,
I have no idea. I was just like, I saw Locked On. I was like, how do I pronounce this? And your video came up. I was like, okay, cool. So I listened to it like 30 times, and I still don't know if I said it correctly. Yeah.
I go with Vaclav Nestrasil, but I hear other people saying Nestrazel. It's Czech. Has no like etymological connections with Czech whatsoever. I'm completely lost with Czech.
I just go with what the home announcer's saying, and they say Vaslav. Yeah. So that's so.
Yeah.
I really like him. Like he's raw, but he's again really good body there, especially can grow into it. And you really like the way he plays. Like he's relentless. So
violent and
playing for UMass next year.
Yeah, like
it's gonna be good.
Oh, there you go. UMass.
There's some upside there that's probably we haven't seen yet too. I think that's maybe a safe pick, but there's some upside there too.
I would disagree. I think it's the inverse a bit. I think there's a lot of risk a bit with Nestrasil. I think the defensive instincts give me a lot of pause. There's a lot of defensive engagement. The work effort, the work rate's always there with this player. And in terms of like neutral zone stick lifts and stealing the puck in the neutral zone, he's very, very good defensively. In his own zone, he's a bit of a headless chicken at times. But in terms of raw upside of how the physicality meshes with the handling, meshes with the creativity, the amount of hook passes he's been like just accurately hitting off in recent weeks, behind the back, no look to spring an odd man rush. Like there's a wide variety of things he can do with the puck on his stick. And in my viewings this season of the Muskegon Lumberjacks, ever since Ryabkin's come over, it's been a very clear ranking where Ryabkin's been like the third like biggest offensive threat on the team. Nestor's has been like very clearly above him as a second biggest producer. But the top offensive player in Muskegon all year long, like every single shift, every single game, also better defensively than either of these guys, has been Tynan Lawrence, the D-1. He's amazing, so much fun to watch. Incessant motor, very intelligent, great playmaker. He plays PK1. When Ivan Ryabkin stops his defensive zone assignments and just looks at the blue line to cherry pick, you know who picks up the center assignments in the D zone? The 16-year-old kids. So he's very fun, but Nestor still's awesome. But to go back a little bit to the last four players, we probably should wrap up this because we have a lot of players to talk about. I think with the Preds specifically, I would disagree a bit with Linc. I think they're going to go for upside here still because, yes, they're going for upside with their first pick, but they have so much depth in that pool overall. They have a lot of guys that can fill in the fourth line, the third pairing down the road. What they need is game breakers, and I think that maybe taking a swing on another guy there this year would make a lot of sense, and the one that makes sense to me would be William Moore. He has a frame he can grow into. He plays center. He can play on the wing. He's versatile. He's adaptable. He's intelligent. I think that Barry Trotz will look at that player and see a really like a bunch of possible outcomes in his development. Of you can kind of channel him in different directions at this point still, and he can turn into different types of players. And there aren't that many players left at this stage in the draft where you have both upside and also some developmental control of what style you want them to go down in the future.
I don't like that pick in the first round. I have so many issues with this game. And the upside's there. The skating and the power and the offensive ability, but geez, the details make me think. I know he's gotten better. I know he's improved throughout the second half, but we want to talk about a guy who's inconsistent. My goodness, but I guess that's why maybe he would be available here. Not a first rounder for me, but I could understand the pick.
All right. And again, we're in the range now where no matter what, I think we're talking about B-grade talents. Like you're talking about second round talents, no matter who you're considering here. There's question marks with everyone. He's one that I think has upside, and Nashville, I don't think they have much use going for a guy like Shane Van Zaghe because they have so many other guys that could play down the lineup in the future. Going for upside would make sense, but I don't think Will Moore is the only option here, right? Like there's other guys.
I kind of still going back to whoever made this point first. I still kind of like the justification for Ravensburg here. I mean, it kind of makes sense. I'm not, and I'm also just not the biggest Will Moore fan. I could see someone falling in love with him. It's just a lot for me, and he's going to BC, and I don't know. So we'll see with that. But I think Ravensburg of any of the goalies is the best shot to go first round. I mean, 6'5" and athletic. People drool over that. I get a little bit scared with the season that he's had. He has not blown me away like a lot of people have been saying he was going to. But again, you just lost Askarov. It's a weaker draft. I see the justification to take him in the first round, especially when just other people could just jump up and take him. That's my apprehension, if you guys agree with me or not. So,
what about Winnipeg, boys? 31, Winnipeg and Washington. Let's go back to back here real quick.
Braden Coots. Yeah, I like Coots for Winnipeg. He brings energy. He has upside, good handling skill, and we've seen that in recent years with the Jets. They like going for kind of balancing between the upside and the certainty, and I think Coots in this range you get.
Yeah, I think playmaking center is something that Winnipeg could go towards as well. Somebody who can play through the middle six that can make plays.
Am I out of line for suggesting that Cole Retchney could also be an option here potentially?
Very good, yeah.
I like Coots more, but I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate because of I think just Retchney, sometimes he plays a very, very passionate game, and despite the skating, despite some stuff, despite some of the details in his game, I think someone could definitely really like him. I do prefer Coots, but I'm just throwing out a little
I kind
nugget.
of like rushing to Nashville. Like we're talking about them needing some upside guys. He put up 92 points in 62 games. Like there's upside here as a very high end playmaker who's not the greatest skater, but I mean 28th pick, whatever. Nashville needs some high end talent. They may be about to start a big rebuild if they tear this thing down, right? So the guy's got some warts, but offensive ability, he's right there with the best guys who are left.
All right, for Washington, then I guess we can move on to that, right?
Yep, fire away.
I want to just mention one guy that we haven't mentioned yet that I think is slowly creeping into the first round, potentially. That's Riker Lee from Madison. I think just in terms of skill wise, what he's bringing in. I mean, hey, Sebastian, he's I guess more comparable to Tarek Parasak, I'd say, but I really do. So good. Yeah, the skills there, the shot. Good Lord.
Yeah.
I'm a really big fan of USHL prospects. I think he's a Michigan State commit, which also gets me just going. I love that too. I think he's somebody that is like, just keep your eye on him because I think he's going to rise. But Riker Lee, I was kind of shocked that we didn't mention him at this point. But yeah, he's a lot of skill there. He's someone that I could totally see someone taking a flyer on first round.
I would have brought him up for the Hurricanes if Kindle hadn't been available anymore. I think that he'd be up their alley. He's so skilled. The combination of puck handling and shooting and playmaking in the USHL is the best combination of any draft eligible talent this year, bar none, and it's not very close in my opinion. The skating is ultra ugly. That needs a lot of work, in my opinion, but the intelligence and the raw tools are great. So I think in the late first, there's a lot of risk. He's far from a sure thing. Like he could easily as like an AHL scorer at his peak.
I like Cameron Reed. Brock just mentioned. I don't know if he's going to last this long, but that'd be pretty.
Yeah, he'd be in my top 20. I mean, there's some risk that he's one of those jacks of all trades that does have trouble transitioning, but I like the skating ability a lot. I think that he's going to find a role in some way, shape, or form. You know, maybe it's like a Calvin DeHaan kind of solid number 4 for a decade. But at this point in the draft, if Cam Reed's available, he'd be my pick easily. I'd be running up to the podium.
I like him too.
Ryabkin to the Capitals too. That'd be kind of cool.
Ryabkin,
makes sense.
He's been talked about a couple of times, but not
placed.
Not placed. So okay, well we'll say that.
Reed's a good pick there.
Reed's a good pick. You want to put Reed there?
Yeah.
Guys?
Washington's going to take an upside guy. Reed would be a guy offensively if you're looking for upside. I'm going to come back to Wang again as a home run swing.
Reed's a good pick, yeah.
Reed Kettles would be another one. He's a September 1st birthday. He missed next year's draft by a week and a half. One of the youngest guys in the draft, and at 6'5", I like his mobility. But Washington screams to me, Ryabkin could be a guy. They scream to me as a team that's not playing it safe. They didn't play it safe last year with any of their picks, probably the last 2 years, and it's paying dividends for them. So I think they're just going to keep tossing up balls to themselves and trying to hit home runs over the Little League parks and see if it works out. So one of those guys would work for me, but see what you guys say.
Can you guys hear
Speaking
me now?
about a right D who's kind of on an upward trend after dipping earlier on this season, I think Charlie Treadway is going to get some first-round looks from NHL teams with just how mobile he is. He's gone from becoming a player who panics every time he touches the puck or the puck comes within 5 feet of him to being a real solidifying force for the NTDP in recent months. That mobility has been very much a shutdown defensive thing. The on-puck game hasn't really shown all that much upside this season, but he's an August 2nd birthday, extraordinarily rich parents, so you know that there's a lot of investment in his development. I think that there's definitely going to be some interest in this player because he has, again, 6'2", 200-pound right shot D, young for the class, good defensively this season, and some potential room to grow because offensively, when he was playing like U15 AAA, oh boy, he was so dynamic playing with Little Caesars. Like he had 20 goals and 86 points in 81 games a couple of years ago there. He was very much an offensive defenseman. So I could see Washington taking that swing and looking at that element, maybe taking a bit of a step in the next little bit.
All right, boys, I think we're good on that. Let me just bring up the last few picks here. So that's what we went with.
Cool.
Nashville, we're kind of debating over Moore and Ravensburgen. So
go Ravensburgen. Go Ravensburgen.
Yeah, we can't have Will Moore in the first round.
All right, gentlemen, that is it for the mock draft. That was a lot of fun. We ran a little later than expected, but hey, whatever. When you're having fun, it's all good. Appreciate everyone for coming. Linc, New Wave Hockey, Brock, McKean's Hockey, Sebastian High, Locked On and Elite Prospects, Rocco and Darren, the Punk Bunker Boys, and Anthony, Draft Prospect Hockey. Boys, I'll put all the description, all the links for their sites and stuff. And yeah, I guess we'll be talking soon, boys. Thanks for coming, and cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks for organizing.
Yeah. See you.